Hello and welcome. Today, just want to address the question of the existence of Jesus. Now, this is kind of it's obvious, kind of what side I'm on, but I think that there's a lot of people in countries that are becoming less religious, and then they hear a lot of lies. And so when they hear a lot of these lies, um, it kind of bolsters their stupidity. But they kind of ridicule Christians, and if you tell a lie long enough, people start to believe it. So why are they doing this? Well, simply put, a lot of the other criticisms of Jesus Christ are not working anymore. And so they have to deny more. Used to be they just denied God, but now they deny that a human Jesus existed. And it's really a problem because we've got record from many institutions, still the majority. And when I say the majority, I mean like there's only like maybe one or two, three people who are educated in other places and then trying to impose this lie as opposed to those who are really studying the field. But I want to focus here today. We're going to talk a little bit about the historians, but generally, I wanted to kind of go over some ideas, what we see in archaeology. Okay. So now with historians, we have a lot of different things that have popped up. Some of these are well known. Um, I guess where I would start is you have Josephus, and Josephus just goes right out there with one statement. And this statement is that, there was this man named Jesus and he performed many miracles and um, they crucified him and they believe he rose from the dead and, that he was the Messiah. And typically they think, well, it's a conspiracy that couldn't be. And they say that because Josephus was a Jew. Well, Jews can believe in Jesus. In fact, many Jews did believe in Jesus. It didn't stop them from being Jewish. However, there are doctrinal differences that are not mentioned by Josephus. Okay, so they would have a problem with Jesus being God, but Josephus' statement didn't say that Jesus was God. It said he was the Messiah. Now, I believe ultimately that's true, through other scriptures, but um, just saying that does not differentiate from his character. And every manuscript, except they recently found some, what do they call it, Arabic manuscripts. Now, he wrote his in Latin. He was a Roman, and so he wrote the history of the Jews in Latin. But there was like a translation in Arabic, and they kind of warp it a little bit. But that's kind of natural because Islam conquered everything. So, they would have to say things according to what the Islamic way of interpreting is. So that's why, for instance, like they would all call God Allah instead of the divine name, Jehovah, or Yahuwah, or whatever they wanted to do with it. But yeah, so basically, he wrote that, but he also wrote another statement about Jesus being the that he was talking about James, and whenever you hear about James, he's the brother of Jesus. So Josephus mentioned James, the brother of Jesus, and he said who was the Messiah, it was the Christ. There it is again. Now, let's see here. There's other guys. Let me see if I can pin a couple. Celsus was a pagan who argued with a Christian named Origen. He's not much of a Christian, but he was a Christian named Origen, and he basically said that the reason that Jesus was doing all these miracles was through the power of witchcraft. never denied that Jesus existed. In the Talmud, they also had a lot of terrible things to say about Jesus. But and they also said it must be witchcraft. That's how he's doing all these miracles. But they never denied he existed. Okay, so they admit there's something supernatural going on there. Let's see here. Also, Tacitus didn't like Jesus. He kind of slurs his name a little bit, calls him Crestus, but that's kind of more, when you hear something and then you got an accent on it. Um, but he admitted that Jesus was a person, that Jesus died on the cross, and he died under Pontius Pilate. Now, there was a church historian named Eusebius, and he found a story from a guy named Tertullian. Tertullian is most known for being the first guy to talk about the Trinity, okay, but and coined the term. Nevertheless, Tertullian was an apologist and he was a lawyer um, for the faith, and so he defended the faith. And he, in court, he claimed that when Jesus Christ rose from the dead and people saw him, that Pontius Pilate got scared. And when he got scared, he asked the emperor if he'd put Jesus up in the Pantheon. But the emperor had to go to the Senate to do that, and the Senate rejected it. Now, let's see here. And then, let's see here. Okay. There's another one that I wanted to hit on. I mean, there's been many of these guys, but there was one. If I could, well, I can't find it for now. But Trifo, I don't know. But there was a Roman historian who recorded these Christians being tortured to death, and he noticed how Pliny the Younger. Okay. Anyway, he noticed how they worshiped Jesus as a god. So they all believed that Jesus was the Lord God. Now, let me get stronger towards the archaeology of things. Now, there are just things that have been discovered, and basically what I'm seeing is that some of these scholars, they just decided that history is not true. They just decided to, get in this criticism, and they got conspiratorial. You know, conspiracy theory is this idea that what I'm being told isn't true. The evidence that I've gathered is not true, so there's some sort of conspiracy to make a different story. So then all of world history is a big conspiracy. And they debunked Jewish history, they debunked English history, they just, all sorts of different stuff they just got rid of to impose their beliefs. They tried to put Egyptian history as the most important thing, and that's a longer story. But they assumed that archaeology would back them up. So some things that we found recently that were not originally backed up by archaeology. We found the temple. We've also found this one passageway, the southern steps, where you had the pathway where people would go to the temple. And it's kind of neat because Jesus would have been walking up that pathway. There's a story of Neil Armstrong, the man who, first man to step on the moon. And he's, people know about his sentence as one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. But a lot of people don't know that he went to Israel and went down that pathway. And he said that's, when he heard that Jesus walked along that pathway, he said, these are the most important steps that I've ever taken. So, we know the temple. Jacob's well. Jacob's well, of course, we know Jacob dug the well. It would have been probably about 130 feet deep. You can't move these wells around. There's a Eastern Orthodox church built around it now. But this is where Jesus met the woman at the well. And then the pool of Bethsaida, and I think also the pool of Bethesda. I think there's over two different ones. Basically, those are two places, once again, assumed, they're not really there, or they weren't there at that time. Now we found archaeological evidence that they were there. When we look at Pontius Pilate and Caiaphas, okay, when you get these different politicians in office, a lot of times they serve at different times. So, this helps chronology to get exactly when this happened. But there was some doubt as to whether these were real figures, maybe it's fiction. But we found Caiaphas's tomb. We found some plaques of buildings that were under the construction of Pontius Pilate. And interesting, in Caiaphas' tomb, they found these crooked nails, which a lot of people believe were nails that came off of a cross, and therefore, they got it from Jesus' cross. Like, in other words, he was like, what happened? And they gave him the nails as evidence. I'm not going to hang my hat on that one. Some of the stuff is up to interpretation. But the fact is, we got Caiaphas and we got Pilate. We've got historical things and people. And you would have had to know, you would have had to be around back then. You didn't have the kind of technology, the ability to record like we do today. So history was not quite as organized. And you would be aloof to many of these facts. And then they also found the ossuary, which is another. It's kind of like the bone box. It's like a tomb that's small, and you put your bones in it. We found the ossuary of James, the brother of Jesus. It's not always mentioned in Josephus, but James is very influential in the church of Jerusalem. And his body has been found. Now, Jesus ascended to heaven, so we're not going to find his body. But now we found this guy who doesn't historically exist without saying, hey, he's the brother. He's the brother of Jesus. So, and of course, the fact is that this guy denied that Jesus was the Christ while Jesus was alive until after the Passion when he resurrected from the dead. And this is also John the Baptist. John the Baptist has a lot of testimony in the Gospels. He also has testimony in Josephus. Now, there is a church out in Russia, and a lot of the Catholics, they collect all these artifacts. And some of them are genuine and some of them ain't, because they found out that you can make a lot of money selling these things off. So there are human bones that represent John the Baptist in this Russian church. The problem is that they've also got some animal bones in there. So, obviously it's been tampered with. But whether or not we have those bones, he is a historical figure. And we know, historically he's been recorded over and over to point to Christ. And, he's a biblical character. Joseph Arimathea, I've got a lot of stuff I've done on him in other videos. I'll just summarize it real quick. Joseph Arimathea, he's the one that had the tomb, and he was the rich man. So, you want to have a historical record of him. Well, there's all these legends about him over in Britain and him over in France. And what happens is that, you have all these stories. It's hard to corroborate because, the pagans don't keep history as good as the Jews do. However, there is archaeological evidence of Jewish trees in the land where he ended up retiring over in Glastonbury, England. It wouldn't be called England at that time. It would be called the Cassarites, or the Jews would call it Tarshish. And he was a miner of tin, and that's the only place that you can get tin in that continental area. So, yeah, there's a history of that. The Phoenicians would go get that, and he was from northern Israel. Northern Israel is right next to Tyre, which is where the Phoenicians come from. So, I mean, there's just a lot of connection there. Anyway, they also have legends about him with the Holy Grail, and he possessed the Shroud of Turin. And guess what? The Shroud of Turin was kept in a copper cylinder, and the Shroud of Turin keeps the blood of Christ. Therefore, the cylinder having the blood in it would be the Holy Grail. And there's also another artifact, the Sidarium of Oviedo, where we would call it in the Gospels the face cloth. Okay, so they found the face cloth that matches 114 times with the Shroud of Turin. I mean, you can have 2 hours just talking about the Shroud of Turin by itself. But, yeah, the Shroud of Turin, and then you had the Sidarium, and then these make a connection with the Garden Tomb. Okay, the Garden Tomb is a sepulcher, and it's got two different bed plots, and the one, all right, it carves out to be about 5'8". Then it has an extra bottom layer for feet. It's about 3 inches deep. So like they had to make an adjustment. So that's like somebody 5'11". Well, the shroud has the body of a man who's 5'11". So that connects. But there's another tomb. So what do you do with the tomb of the Holy Sepulchre? Well, of course, that was discovered by Constantine's mother and Hadrian. That was a pagan temple. So they might want to, highlight the pagan temple. However, over where they had the guard tomb, there is a missing area for the Great Stone. The Great Stone mentioned in Mark um, is missing. Where was it? Well, they found this great stone called the Great Stone of Mount Nebo, which is a disc, and it was an ancient tomb door, a rock door that would roll in, and the garden tomb has a ditch that perfectly fits that disc. The ditch starts off 15 inches and widens to 18 so that it rolls in, and the Mount Nebo stone is about 15 inches, so it fits right in there and can roll in. So all those things add up to point to that being the place. Now, something I found out here recently is the Nazarene inscription. And what this was is it was a local law that got put in force about 41 AD. So that's about 10 years after the crucifixion. And this local law had a death penalty for those people who want to steal bodies. Okay. So obviously there was a huge search. They couldn't find the body. And they made a law in reaction to that. Because why else would they make that law? A death penalty for messing with corpses and bodies? See? So that kind of, puts things in perspective, and it gives credence to the history. And of course, the Gospels are very close to the time of Christ. Um, there's a manuscript of John that was made in 115 AD. John, the Gospel, was written in 90 AD, so it's only like, close to 30 years. The the Gospels themselves, we've got about 5 to 6,000 manuscripts of them, and over 90% of them, I mean, like 80% of those Gospels are in perfect agreement. Okay, and then you add a couple steps further, and basically most of like 97% of it is just in perfect harmony. So you don't get any of this like, oh, well, here's the real story that happened. The closest time you get to that is about 300 AD, 300 years after Christ, before anyone tries to come up with a alternative gospel. And those were called the Gnostic Gospels, and the majority of people rejected them pretty handily. And I mean, they didn't have very much, superiority of knowledge there. I mean, these were Egyptians instead of Israelites. Just didn't have their head in the game. So, I guess that's probably it for this. So, just wanted to kind of bring this out. My other channel, I've lost my ability to get on with it, so I'm just kind of making this available for people. So I'll be doing more apologetics and on this channel. So catch you later.